So when people speak about things being your season, it's like a thing you hear at the beginning of every year in most churches. It's like, it's your season this year, it's going to be your year, and all that kind of thing. It's like a thing we hear all the time. And then, I don't think any of us ever really look back at the end of the year and think, well, was it really my season? Because the fact of the matter is, every year is filled with good things and bad things, ups and downs, highs and lows, tears and joy, all of that thing. Those things come together, and all of those things together are your life. And I've sort of made a habit lately of just trying to get outside, and I love to go and just look at what's happening in nature. And many times Llewellyn and I will go and walk. Most of the time we like to go and walk and just be out in nature and see what's happening and look at the birds and all that kind of stuff. And, about a couple of months ago, I was walking, and you see all these little caterpillars, and you see all the little worms, and you see nymph, which is little babies, if you don't know, of different kinds of insects. And we hear a couple of months later, and suddenly you don't see them anymore, but you're seeing butterflies, and you're seeing more moths, and you're seeing other little things that were nymphs that are now grown up. And I just was looking the other day, and I saw a butterfly, and I thought, it's amazing, because there is definitely a season for everything, and the Bible tells us that you can't, I think in every day of your life you're in your season, whether it's your season of mourning, whether it's your season of dancing, whether it's your season of grief or joy. And you know what, in the middle of all those things, whether it's good or bad, you can always have God's peace, and you can always have God's joy. But I realized, just looking at nature, that seasons come round, they come and they go, and they come and they go. And if you're going through something right now, it's not going to stay like that. No caterpillar stays a caterpillar. They eventually get into a state where they'll spin a cocoon, or they'll go into a pupa, and they'll come out as a butterfly or a moth. And in some cases, those little grubs or worms turn into beetles or other kinds of insects. And so, you don't stay there. You cannot stay there. And what I really sort of struck me as well was this, and I'm a bit of an insect nerd, so excuse me, but when you look at caterpillars and you think about what do that whole time, all they ever do is eat. When we raised silkworms, the funny thing was that those little worms, caterpillars, all they did their whole life was eat, and eat. There was nothing else. That was their entire thing, was to just eat. And then they would spin a cocoon, and they'd come out as a moth. And the funny thing, and this is not the case with all moths, but these particular moths don't eat, they don't drink. All they do is reproduce, and then they pass away. But I realized something, that what that caterpillar does is so important. That eating that it does, that non-stop eating that makes it grow. Without that, there would be no moth. It just wouldn't happen. And I realized that, when we as people, and I'm not trying to compare us to worms, but we have to eat the word. We have to really get into the word. For us to go through the transformation that God wants in our life, we have to consume the word like our life depends on it. Just like that little caterpillar consumed leaves day in, day out, night and day. They didn't stop. So that when they got to the point where they were big enough, they could spin that cocoon and come out to what God created them to be, which was a moth. And in some cases, those caterpillars become butterflies. But the important thing, and their whole job for every little caterpillar, is just to eat. And if you are not where God has called you to be yet, then your whole thing in life is to consume His word, so that you can grow enough to become who He called you to be. And I just thought that was interesting, and I thought it was encouraging. So if you're not where you're meant to be, if you're not in that place yet that God has called you and you don't know why, keep on eating, because when you eat enough, you will get to a point where you know God and you know what you should know in the word to become the exact amazing person that God has called you to be. So I hope that helps someone today, and I'll see you next time.